everybody. Welcome to Pharmaceutical Soccer. So happy to be here with you. Well, kind of happy to be here with you to talk Nashville soccer, where we can fill your entertainment and all your Nashville soccer needs, but we cannot fill your mood swing prescription for rooting for this team. I, of course, am here with Flair Shabilla and Clay Trainham.
Good
Way to stick the landing. What were you doing there?
Anyway, I am happy to be here. I think it's fair to say that we're always happy to be here. Happiness in terms of satisfaction, I guess, with Nashville SC is up and down always, but we are always happy to be here.
That's kind of where the mood swing joke was going. I do realize I probably could have phrased that better. I just didn't write it down this time. I apologize.
That's okay. You know what? We always start with this. We'll get to the soccer. It's not a big deal. It's fine. We'll talk about it. We've talked about it for almost 300 episodes now. We always start with my weekend. Steven, I want to start with your weekend today. Well, how was your weekend?
Do you want to share what we've done?
I was gonna say, because I feel like
just want to share each other's weekends, because we did the same thing over the weekend.
Yeah, we played early access of FIFA 26 or EAFC 26, if you would, which was an incredible time. We didn't play together actually.
There was multiple times where you were just online that I just decided I was not going to invite you or do anything, just because I know what playing Ultimate Team is like. It's, figuring stuff out on our own for a while. And then, maybe we'll play Rush at some point, maybe. But, we'll get there.
Anything else you did this weekend?
I did go to Philly on Friday for a concert. I did go up to Philly. It is really funny I give the middle finger to Chester every single time I drove by it? Yes, I did. Because it was fantastic to be able to do. I did go to a concert, a band called Turnstile there. So got some hardcore fun in. It was a good time.
Clay, anything other than watching Nashville SC that you did?
Well, I was going to say I was sick most of the weekend, but I settled in at 6:30 and was pretty excited and watched the teams go back and up and down the field, and really had a great time watching America's Indiana Hoosiers beat Illinois by 53 points. That was the best thing that happened in my house at 6:30 on Saturday night. I guess
it was a good weekend for Big Ten, especially located here within this, because Michigan also got a win. So very happy about that. Go Blue.
Blair, what are your thoughts on Big Ten football?
I think MTSU won.
They didn't. They lost by 20.
Oh, no. Oh, no. My bad.
It was homecoming.
They lost. Wait. We lost. I'm going to say we. I feel like I paid that institution enough money to say we.
I feel like you're allowed.
We lost our homecoming game by 20 points.
Yes.
Oh, buddy. Okay.
And after a 2-hour rain delay.
Look, I've always said we're a basketball school. Okay.
Soccer won. So
shout out to the soccer.
In some ways, MTSU football won.
But
I think I've said this story multiple times. I had never heard, because I didn't move to Nashville yet. I'd never heard of MTSU until they beat Michigan State in the tournament. What year specifically, where they were a 15 seed beating the 2, and I fell in love.
15.
Fun story. Michigan State did also play at MTSU when Magic Johnson led them to a national title. They played the NCAA tournament in Murfreesboro. There's some Murphy Center facts for you.
And speaking of Magic Johnson, a place that is known for its magic is Orlando. Nashville were unable to get
Oh my gosh, shut up.
I wrote in my player rating, I said, Nashville were unable to find any happiness miles away from the happiest place on earth. So I was pretty proud of that one, honestly. I was like, fair enough.
It is unfortunate, because I do feel like this match is like a little bit outside of our minds now, because we definitely were not feeling as happy after that match and everything conspiring to what we're feeling right now. So let's reshape our mood a little bit. Let's get back into our dark, depressive Nashville SC state. Look, we go from the highs and the lows of making an Open Cup final, planning our trip to now losing 6 of 7, being on the outskirts of we were talking about supporter shield 2 weeks ago, and now here we are talking about we're worried about Nashville even making a playoff game, specifically. What This sucks.
It feels an awful lot like this time last year, aside from the Open Cup, honestly. That's the way the results look, I do think that the results are worse than the performances. In some ways, similar to earlier this year when the results were better than the performances. So I think this is sort of that, nasty, you know, coming back down to earth a little bit, but it has been crazy. Like, I think, I can't remember if it was on the Slack or if it was on the Discord, but this was a big conversation over the weekend. Like, Nashville's underperforming its underlying metrics by an exceptional number. And so you hope that the pendulum swings back in the right direction for Nashville by the time that the playoffs run around. But yeah, it's a bit troubling.
And I do think for the mood, like playing kind of well for most of the game actually makes you more angry that they lost the game. You know what I mean? If you get beaten like that Seattle game, you're just well beaten. It is what it is. You take your loss and move on. But these last few games, especially the last two, I mean, last minute, the last shot of the game, pretty much, just just a heartbreak, honestly. And I think it does grow a bigger frustration within the fan base, and it's very understandable frustration. But I think the frustration that it lights up with BJ Callahan and the players is even more important because they just cannot let this affect them going into Houston, definitely going into the Open Cup Final. You're just gonna have to move on and not think about that league form. And you know what? If you're looking for some silver linings out there, Nashville SC are still 3 points away from fourth place. I know the teams ahead of them have a game in hand, but still, it's not like it's all lost yet.
I think it's also worth remembering that a couple months ago, 3 months ago, you looked at Charlotte and you're like, how is this Charlotte team going to miss the playoffs? And then they run off in basically unprecedented run of success to push all the way back up that table. I mean, that is what happens in this league. We saw it happen, honestly, with Orlando, where Orlando pushed into the mix and then kind of went through a bad spell. And unfortunately, Nashville was the end of that bad spell. But things change very quickly in this league. And I think that that's worth keeping in mind. And in a year where the East is as competitive as it has been in the upper half, like it becomes more important. And like if you look at the point totals and things like that, like the East is far outpacing what you'd expect. Certainly outpacing the West. So it's one of those where there's just so much teams clumped together in that sort of upper third, upper half.
Yeah, I do think it's one thing to talk about, especially I'm going to be a little bit different than Clay and Valaire right now, just because I feel like I'm going to be the sanctity of I'm with the fans more or less. You two are way too positive for my liking. Yes, absolutely. The East is crazy, convoluted. It's messy. It's something that we didn't expect this year.
No, Messi's in Miami.
Charlotte going on a run specifically. Not you expected them to be a little bit better, but kind of unprecedented, right? You didn't expect Charlotte to go on this run. It has gotten to the point now where we can expect Nashville to make a collapse at some point. It is now now statistically more likely to happen than not when it comes to the amount of times that we've gone through this as Nashville fans. What can we be optimistic about to fix this? It's not a trend line anymore. It's a major problem when it comes to ends of games and trying to figure this out. Because is there a negative that you could put to this season? Like you said, in terms of performance, in terms of play, like how many negatives can you put on Nashville's specific performances this season that don't result in, say, a collapse from this team? Like, is there any other problem that outweighs that at the current moment?
I mean, I think biggest problem is that Nashville isn't as secure defensively as they were earlier in the season. And even earlier in the season, there were multiple games where Nashville looked shaky at the back. And that is the foundation of a good team. That is the cornerstone of every good team out there, is that they are stable at the back. And when I say at the back, I don't just mean the center backs or the back line. I mean literally everybody who is doing that defensive job. If you look at the Cincinnati goal, Hani Mukhtar could have tracked better on Evander. Now, is it his job to go and track Evander? No, obviously not. There are defenders and there are midfielders who should be doing that. But the ability to clog that and make the run and track Evander would have stopped the goal. If you look at the Orlando goal, Andy Nahar kind of gets beaten really easily, is exhausted. He cannot make the run anymore. Boom, goal last minute. Now we're looking at these two goals because they happened in the last minutes and they were the deciders. But if you look at every single goal Nashville conceded, you'll see a lot more individual errors and organizational errors at times than you saw earlier in the season. Why is that happening? There's a couple of reasons for it. I think one, and we cannot stress this enough, the exhaustion these players are going through physically. It is a long, long season, and they have been all over a whole continent, really, if you think about it. The United States is not a small country. Some of them have gone on international duties. Some of them have gotten actual injuries. Some of them haven't returned even from their actual injuries. So I think that's going to play a big part. Now, other teams are dealing with that too. So you don't have to, it's not an excuse. I'm not saying this as an excuse. I'm saying it as a reason, perhaps, for this. The other reason, and a big one, is that this team is still not in the final sort of, what is it called, phase, I guess, of what BJ Callahan and Mike Jacobs wanted to be. This was always window one of two, year one of two to rebuild this team. There are 13 players out of contract by the end of the year. That's half the squad. So when you look at that, yes, there are a lot of players that we know and love in this squad that just simply will not be in Nashville next year. And while that sucks, but that is kind of the business. And I think we cannot judge it yet until they get that sort of the ideal player quality and player groups, right? So I think those two reasons are the biggest things, really, and everything else kind of trickles down from there. That said, with everything as bad as it is, and losing all these games and all these trends and not having the players and all that, still being able to be one game away from the first trophy in club history will turn this season around, and the way we talk about the season will flip completely if that trophy was to be earned.
I think it was 2 weeks ago when we talked about whether or not the season was a success already. And I still think if you take a big picture, look at the way the team's playing and the way that it's built and the success that the team has had, I think we would all agree making the playoffs makes this a success. And I think the playoffs is kind of, I'm not worried about missing the playoffs necessarily. But what I will say, going back to like what the issues lie in, I think that we look at it's not just that the injuries happen, because like Valaire said, every team has injuries. It's where they have been and where that inconsistency has been directly leads to a team being leakier and allowing more goals. So there hasn't really been a consistent center back pairing, which on one hand is good because it means there's competition, but on the other hand, it does mean that chemistry gets broken up a little bit in a very dangerous part of the field. And I think it's more than that. It's the entire back line, of course. Like Dan Lovitz just came back. He had missed out. Taylor Washington has been gone, and he's a backup, but he's a backup who has traditionally played a good amount. And then you look at right back, had injuries there, obviously, well established injuries a month or so ago, and issues there a month or so ago. And so you haven't really been able to nail down a consistent back line for the last 2 months. And when you go back and you watch the Nashville team, that when it was successful and on this big run, that was the one unchanging part of the lineup, right? Like we saw minor changes up top on the wings. We saw a lot of changes on the wing. We saw change in the midfield. And I think we've seen a lot of inconsistency up and down, aside from essentially Sam Surridge and Hani Mukhtar and Joe Willis. Everything else has been changing quite a bit over this bad patch.
And if I can throw one last reason I think this is happening as well is it's the psychological aspect from both the opponents and Nashville SC players. So let's talk about the opponents first, because I do think there's a huge sort of psychological block. And I've been hearing this a lot about Premier League, actually, more so than I heard about MLS, because there's a lot of parity in MLS. But we've seen teams in Premier League go out and have a really good go at the top teams, right? You're thinking about, I'm not talking about the teams at the very bottom. I'm talking about your Bournemouths, right? Your middle of the table team. Go into City and be able to beat Manchester City, which is a team that far surpasses them in spending and talent and all that. But getting over that mental block, because City didn't have the best of seasons, and it kind of last season, and it kind of continued on. So now when a player is going against this team, they're saying, you know what, maybe we do have a chance, because that, there's precedent for that. Now, players aren't sitting there thinking, oh, maybe we have a chance, maybe. But subconsciously, you can't tell me that a player looking to play Nashville SC earlier in the season, seeing Nashville SC finish 13th or whatever it was last season, you're not telling me that they would have the same mentality about Nashville SC than they do right now after the run Nashville SC went on and being finalists in the Open Cup. And that's from opposition standpoint, right? I think there is a very sort of respect that opponents are paying for Nashville SC that wasn't there earlier in the season. And I think coaches and players, that affects them to a level that we can't necessarily measure, but it's definitely there. So I think that's another part of it, that teams now expect Nashville SC to be good enough, so they are more up for the challenges. And I think that does end up playing. Now, what separates good teams from great teams is that they adapt to this and they get even better, or not be affected by teams figuring out how they play. Because even if you know how we play, we do it so well that we win the games. That's kind of what your Columbus and sort of those teams, when they won the MLS Cup, that's what they did.
It's what Cincinnati's done all this year, right?
Right.
Like, Cincinnati has been one goal win merchants.
Yep.
Like, Nashville has gone out and scored a bunch in several games, but then struggled to pull ahead and stay ahead in others. And I think that is where we've seen, maybe a little bit less success than we've been used to seeing from Nashville when Nashville's been good in the past. Because Nashville was good in the past, they were one goal merchants. Like, how many Gary Smith Nashville teams won 2-1 or 1-0 or whatever? And I don't know that we've seen this team comfortably win a game like that. We've seen this team struggle in giving up late equalizers, late goals, and things like that multiple times this year.
But we still have to deal with the result as fans, as players,
right?
Even with the analytics going in, like, even with the psychological aspects, like, we are still here in this moment. So, like, we talk about success for the season, right? We talked a few weeks ago, if we thought already Nashville, say we lose an Open Cup final, and we're in a playoff, and we are in a play-in match for the playoffs. Is that a successful season for you?
Yes. I have my measures of success that I laid out in the beginning of the season, which was make the playoffs and maybe challenge for the Open Cup. They hit both of those, and the team looks really good when they play, to their level. So yeah, I would say it's a success, and I will stick by it. I even said it in the Discord this morning. If they lose out the rest of the season, this is still a successful season for me. That's where I'm at with it.
If you operate under the notion that it's a multi-year project, you can't really grade it as anything other than a success, because you've had a proof of concept that the way that Nashville plays can win. But that is using a metric that was defined by before the season started. And so I would call it a success on the basis that Nashville did what we hoped that they would do at the start of the season. Now, if you measure it only by what we thought 2 months ago, I still think you would call it a success because the team is in the Open Cup final. But I do think that as much as we want Nashville to win the Open Cup final and finally get a piece of silverware, I do think you can't forget that the Open Cup is not the normal Open Cup. I think that sometimes has been lost talking about it. Now, the fact that Philly has had an unbelievable year and Nashville beat Philly in the Open Cup certainly gives more credence to it, but it's not like Nashville is playing the best of the best over and over again in the Open Cup. And so it is very much a grading your season a success because you did well in the Europa League type of feeling, you know what I mean? Which I think is still a success, and I think that is worth noting for a team that finished 13th last year. But it is a measure of success.
But at the same time, you look at Nashville's opponents in Orlando and Philly; those were really good opponents, and normally they would be in those levels as well.
Right. I'm more or less saying, like, on the basis of earlier this season, if you look at Nashville being one of the best teams in the league, if they're in a play-in game or something like that, that would not be a success on the basis of the midway point, even if they won the Open Cup because of what the Open Cup is this year. And that is not to denigrate the Open Cup. I love the Open Cup. I've talked about it so many times. But I do think that a lot is riding on the Open Cup for a lot of fans. But for us talking on this show, like, I think it's a success no matter what. This season is a success no matter what. But I do think if that Nashville were to lose the Open Cup, a lot of fans will feel like the season hasn't been successful.
Well, and I think it's because of and it's the frustrating thing about having the proof of concept be extremely successful for a decent amount of the season.
Yeah.
Like, it's like the blessing and the curse of actually being good is, guess what? We've seen this team be extremely good. So now you're more invested in it. But now that we've gotten to this time specifically where we've lost 6 of 7 or whatever, it's extremely frustrating because we've been good.
If you rearrange the results, but they all stay the same, I think the feeling around Nashville would be different. Like, if all of the regular season was the same results, but it wasn't a huge run of success and a big run of, like, losing, but you had it, like, kind of patched in there, people would feel a lot differently about the season, even though on the surface there's nothing different.
But I do think if that was to happen, I think the buzz around Nashville will be much lower than.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but however, I think people will be more satisfied in a way. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too philosophical about this. I just think. Yeah.
I think there's there's a lot of, but, like, to the counterpoint of that specifically, especially because I think it relates to this match. Clay brought it up. We're kind of in the same position that we were last year, where, guess what? This is not just an anomaly anymore. This is starting to become a trend.
I was more or less meaning the results feel like that.
I understand that, but even with that, like, you could look at.
Can you really say that? I mean, I don't know. Like, it's
tough. It is tough. You know what I mean? Like, because, like you said, the performances, the results, there's so many reasons that could be, but there also could be specifically that psychological block that you're talking about that is really getting in the way for this team.
I don't think the underlying numbers liked Nashville as much in their worst run last year than they like Nashville in their worst run this year. Like, I think the performances are significantly higher level, even if the results are not. And that's frustrating, and fans don't like hearing that. But it is, like, it does tend to grade out over the course of a season. It's like when a career 250 hitter hits 410 in baseball for a few months, they're going to have a stretch where they hit under 200.
And I'll say
it's just the way it works.
To add to that, I mean, I know the St. Louis game happened and the Atlanta game happened, but Nashville's last 2 losses were Cincinnati and Orlando, not DC, not, whatever happened last year. New England, I think Revolution beat Nashville as well. So you're fighting for something bigger, which makes it already a better situation, right? And I think, there's a lot of result-based analysis here. And we're not experts in terms of what happens on the training pitch, what happens out there. But I'll tell you this, the team is not doing result-based analysis because the coaches are not sitting there and being like, we lost this game, we lost that game. Maybe in their head they are, but to the team, they're focusing on the way they play on the pitch. They focus on the performance way more. They focus on the results because they talk about this point a lot. Any player or the coaches, they talk about the input versus the output. if you go in making sure your input is right, eventually that output will, reach a level that is acceptable and even great. Now, I think if Nashville SC play to their best ability, they can probably come out of those two games with at least a point. But they didn't. And again, I'm just going to go back to this one last point. They cannot let this affect them as they're going into possibly the second biggest game in club history in the Open Cup. And I'll say the most important game in club history, even possibly in this Open Cup final in Austin.
One of those teams that we did beat on the Open Cup run that we couldn't beat on Saturday, though, was Orlando City. And we're going to talk specifically about that match next, right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer. And we are back right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer at Pharma Soccer on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Also, make sure you do check out 615soccer.com. Spell it out. We have an awesome Open Cup run special going on at the current moment for 615 Soccer. So if you have not joined yet and have joined all the conversation, you should see everybody in the Discord that is currently making the trip to Austin. It is super cool to see and be a part of. We love the family and stuff that's over there. Would love to have you be a part of 615soccer.com. It's been a lot of fun to start, be a part of. We'll all be at the Open Cup final. We're looking forward to all of the 615 Soccer members that will be there as well. But would love for you to be a part of it. So please check that out. Also, we will be wearing our Pharma merch to Austin as well. So please make sure you do check out pharmasoccer.com for all of your merchandise. Would love to have you out for that. Okay, got to talk about Orlando losing 3-2 against Orlando in Orlando. Hani Mukhtar getting a goal, Jacob Schaffelberg getting a goal. I don't know who scored for Orlando. I don't really care. But what an open game that was, wasn't it? That was something.
Yeah, I don't totally know why it ended up so open for huge chunks of that game. It was a little bit, it felt a little strange to watch because, you get at the end of that first half, which of course is not a great first half for NSC, and you're feeling like, man, NSC should have scored 2 or 3 goals in that half. They had chances that they often score from that they did not score from. But then you're sitting there and you look at Orlando and you're like, well, Joe Willis made a hell of a save, and it could have very easily been another 2 or 3 on the Orlando side. And in the second half, it still remained fairly open. I mean, it almost felt like an old MLS match, like defending optional.
It was really fun to go back through and watch the highlights of the match specifically because it is absolutely back and forth. Like my head, I'm like, I remember it being open, but I don't remember how many chances went back and forth for each team specifically. Now, I feel like this is a trend against Orlando as well, where this is kind of, we used to have extremely boring matches against Orlando, and now they've become super entertaining.
Yeah, and even in possession, when you look at like 5-minute intervals, it was like back and forth. Now we'll have the ball for 5 minutes. Now you have the. It was kind of like NFL. But really, I think part of it being open was maybe the initial changes to the formation by BJ Callahan. Something that is a little different. He played a 4-3-3 instead of the usual 4-2-2-2. Now, at times, it did look like the usual, but for the most part, Gaston Brugman was kind of playing on that left 8, and Patrick Yazbak was on the right 8, and then Eddie Taxas was behind them. I really, really found it strange that he was trying that out, that formation and that group of people, in the 31st game of the season. It just seemed like a little too serious to be doing that for me. And we've come here and applauded BJ Callahan before for his bravery and for him taking risks. And as I've always said, obviously risks don't always pan out. So if this has worked out, I would have been coming here and telling you how it's a masterclass from BJ Callahan. But it was clear it didn't work out. And honestly, if it wasn't for the optics, I think he would have probably subbed people on and changed back probably 25, 20 minutes in. But that in soccer, that just means something else. And I don't think you want to send that message to your players. So I understand why he didn't do it. And I think it was very clear that Orlando can play through that midfield, even though it had an extra man. He did say that defensively it made them look better, which maybe defensively against a team who likes the ball makes them feel better. But Orlando wasn't necessarily keeping the ball. It was mostly in transition, and it looked a little rough. That midfield looked rough in transition. And it just, Sam Surridge stranded on the left side made no sense either. So, it adjusted in the second half, and it's, just to be completely fair, they did get a goal in the first half with this formation. So, again, I'm not against the formation. I'm just maybe not sure why they waited this long to introduce it.
I mean, I almost hate to bring it up because there's been a lot lived since then, but shades of Seattle trotting out a lineup in an interesting situation and a setup in an interesting situation that you wouldn't necessarily expect given the context of it. But on the other hand, given the context of it, BJ Callahan knows that he got a win to go to a cup final earlier in the week. Maybe you want to give a different look a try. It's kind of a free hit. I think most people were on this show, especially, like, people were expecting to go to Orlando and lose. And so I think, like, maybe that's the approach. I don't particularly like that approach when you're in a playoff hunt. And I'm not saying that's necessarily what was happening, but I can understand the concept of, like, hey, maybe give it a go and see if it works, because you're not going to have very many opportunities against a playoff caliber team down the stretch. I don't know. That's the only sort of idea I could come up with why you're departing it. But on the other hand, it's not like the sort of normal setup had resulted in just a boatload of wins in the last month or so either. So maybe just see if you can change it up and get something else out there after people have watched you play a certain way for so long.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of the things where, if you lose that many in a row, especially in MLS, like, change is kind of needed in some different instances. And I do think, in the first half it didn't fully work, but I do think the goals that were given up were extremely tough. That was an incredible free kick specifically from Ojeda. And then, I mean, I don't, just poor defending specifically on that other goal as well. It, it it's one of those things where you got to try something out there, Valer. I agree with you, but definitely in the second half, there seemed to be a little bit more positive movement and such from Nashville, including almost trying to get the go ahead. So let's talk about the positives specifically. Which one? Like, do you have any positives specifically for this match?
I would say that the fan in me wants to be like, well, there should have been a foul before the second goal, and it should have been a corner before the third goal. So to just shout out to the fans that are listening, I understand, but uh, I do wonder how differently the game is if Sam Surridge doesn't miss the sitter in the second half to make it 3-2.
Yep.
Not a positive, Clay. I'll talk about a positive.
Well, I mean, it's getting into the game. That's what I mean.
No, I do have a positive. I think the biggest positive is Jacob Schaffelberg. I think we've learned over the years that an angry, something to prove Jacob Schaffelberg is the best Jacob Schaffelberg out there. Maybe angry is not the right word. With something to prove, Jacob Schaffelberg comes out swinging in the second half, just terrorizes Orlando's left side. I thought he was really good, especially that first maybe 10-15 minutes of the second half. Looked really, really good and up for it. They kind of found a way to tame him down eventually, and deal with his speed. But man, until then, he was all over he was all over the pitch, playing really well. He is now the third highest goal scorer in MLS for Nashville SC with 3 goals. So he was the first one to break that 2-goal barrier. Obviously, all the other wingers have to, except Tyler Boyd, and then Josh Bauer has to, because things make sense. I think Dan Lovis has to as well in MLS. So this also is more goals than he scored in MLS last season, with about 500 fewer minutes. So, some positive there for him. This is also the most goals he scored ever in an MLS campaign for Jacob Schaffelberg. So if he can get one more, he would already surpass his career best. And I know those numbers don't make sense for the fans listening, but that's always been sort of the thing with Jacob Schaffelberg, is that his on-the-field performances seem to be really grabbing attention, but his output isn't always there.
And don't worry, folks, if you're not able to listen to this show in the next week or two, I guarantee you that we are going to be talking about how Jacob Schaffelberg needs to be performing better probably in the next couple weeks. So, like, if you don't listen for a couple weeks, just know what we're going to be talking about later now that we said that specifically as a positive.
Is this
just
the
wanted
moment a winger has grabbed the spot?
How many times has that been written on our rundown specifically this season? It would be
It has been written so much that Clay didn't even write it today. He was just like, nah, we'll talk about it, I'm sure, but it doesn't need to be written down.
I know it's kind of hard to make this a positive with 3 goals being scored on specifically, but I think it could have been a lot worse if it wasn't for Joe Willis. I think he made a couple big saves, during the match that could have been. I don't think there's a lot that he could have done, for some of maybe the second goal. He probably could have been positioned a little bit better.
I mean,
but
the free kick he very nearly saved, which would have been the save of the season, his fingertips got to it.
Absolutely. But I do think when people look at, I think it's easy to blame the goalkeeper for results. And I think a lot of fans do kind of blame the goalkeeper. I don't think any of those were specifically on Joe. And again, I do think he kept us in the game. I do think he's solidifying himself, continually as that he can be here in a long term and continue to be an above average or a really good goalkeeper for Nashville SC. I do think another we were talking about the fight in the second half as well. It is really, we've been used to seeing a really good first half performance and the second half kind of die a little bit. It was nice to be able to see that fight in the second half a decent amount, that it is still there. You wish you could have seen it a little bit longer into Orlando having the ball, in the 90th minute. But I do think that that's a positive as well. I don't know. Got anything else positive wise?
I mean, the big one is Hani Mukhtar scored. I don't think you can understand. I mean, his last 3 goals are against Orlando, so he's not really. He's got a pretty good total for the year. I think it's like 15 or 16, but he's not really scored at a massive rate the last few weeks, last month or two, and I think that because Nashville doesn't have an established third goal scorer at all, or a fourth or a fifth or a sixth, there's not really a whole lot of goal scoring that isn't Hani and Surridge. I do think we got to make sure that we see more Hani goals. If this is what Nashville is at this point. It's if Hani and Sam don't score, the team is going to struggle. And fortunately, they got a goal from Schaffelberg. They got a goal from Hani. I think Hani probably had another couple chances in that game. Very much felt like a sort of a classic Hani Mukhtar performance that we haven't seen one of those recently. And so I do think while his numbers are good, we haven't seen the breakout Hani in terms of goals and assists. I think we all agree that Hani is the most important player on this roster, even though Surridge has the big goal total right now. I think we all understand that Hani is a huge reason for that. But if given the way that the season's played out from a production standpoint, he needs to be on the score sheet in games that Nashville wins.
Agreed.
I mean, simple as.
I do think one of the surprises, though, from at least the starting lineup and the bench specifically, BJ Callahan said during the week after the Open Cup semi that Walker Zimmerman was just out for rest, that he was perfectly fine. That does seem to have changed with the lineup that was put out there on Saturday, as I think the injury report came out to see that Walker Zimmerman was questionable with a knee injury, and then ended up not playing the match specifically. What's going on?
I do want to say that perfectly fine were Steven's words and not BJ Callahan words. I think we need to clarify that. He never said perfectly fine. He did say they were arresting Walker Zimmerman. So I think we need to clarify Steven words, BJ Callahan words. A lot of times people get them confused. It's like the Lil Wayne Dora the Explorer thing, It's like who said what. Yeah. Anyway,
Steven's never been one for hyperbole.
Yeah, I'm clearly been on TikTok a lot more than the both of you, but I think for Walker, it's been a really, really unfortunate season for him. Contract year first and foremost, so you want to A, play, and B, play really well. He's shown that he can play really well and play at a high level. The only issues he's had this season on the pitch when playing has been with rustiness from being out of practice pretty much. And unfortunately for him, that happened too often. Unfortunately for him, also, it was a freak injury that started this whole situation. He was injured to start the season, even, but the concussion really threw him for a loop. But then even his knee and other parts of his body just don't seem to be working for him at the moment. I don't know the severity of the injury. Nobody knows the severity of the injury. Well, maybe Walker Zimmerman knows the severity of the injury, but that's about it. I think this team has shown, or BJ Callen has shown, that when a fit Walker Zimmerman is there, fits Walker Zimmerman plays. And when I saw him not playing in that semifinal, it was an immediate alert in my head. And I turned to Ben and told him, and he had the similar thought. He was like, something is wrong, because there's no way. I know it's a short bench in the Open Cup. I know he's an older player, I guess, and all that. There's no way you don't want your club captain, the starting center back, to not be in even your 16 man or whatever, however many you take to the Open Cup. So that was a red flag, and then it continued on to the Orlando game. For his sake, for Walker's sake, I hope he's better and he can play. If not the Houston match, the Open Cup final. And I guarantee you, if Walker Zimmerman is fit for the Open Cup final, even if he doesn't play any minutes in Houston, he will play. Against Houston at home. He'll play in Austin if he's ready to go. I don't know if he's going to be ready to go. We talked to BJ Callahan on Thursday, and I'm sure he'll get a question or two about it. So maybe we'll get more info then.
So, yeah, it's really tough because I think going along with this goal scoring conversation, you have to wonder if a DP spot on a central defender is the right move. And along those lines, like looking long term, we did get this question from Logstick on Spotify. And once again, we do read comments and reviews and things like that on Spotify. So if you do have comments, we will look into them. And this is what he says. This was in reference to a conversation we had about the three center backs.
Before you read it, is it supposed to be logistic, or did I read that wrong?
I thought it was Logstick.
I like Log,
but I may have been thrown off by his.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Clay.
I'm checking now because it could be just misspelled logistic, but it looked like. So we are checking into this. This is live. Logistic makes way more sense.
All I know is that one of you misread, and it's not me this time. So
that's crazy.
One of you sucks, and I'm excited to see which one it is actually.
Logstick is funnier because it's a synonym, you know?
I'll look into it, Clay.
It is Logstick.
It is Logstick. Okay. Well, shout out Logstick.
Shout out to Logstick.
But
hope he's a subscriber of 615soccer.com.
Anyway, so here's his question on my something I did recently. So, or they did.
So here's what he said. I would need to hear an incredible case for Mayer to leave ahead of Zimmerman or Palacios if NSC parted ways with one of their top three CVs. If salary, availability, or age is a main factor, Zimmerman is easily first out. Palacios has been a great addition, but Mayer is clearly a better defender, a slightly better passer, comfortable in the air, much younger, and not that much more expensive. I don't know that I agree on most of those things, but it is a fair point, although Mayer is not super cheap either. It is worth noting.
I think you can get the same quality that you get with Jack Mayer for about half of the salary. Now, Mayer does have age on his side. I will give the comment that, because center backs are a little bit of late bloomers. He's still a young player in terms of center backs and could develop into something even better. He's not very young, though. Let's keep in mind that as well. I do agree that keeping Mayer is important simply because of his age, and you already gave him the contract, so you're going to have to. I don't see many teams taking that contract. What I would say to that comment as well is that leave Palacios alone for now. Palacios is kind of the outlier here. Zimmerman is not going to be on this contract going forward. If he was to stay with Nashville SC, it will be under a new contract. There isn't even an option under this contract. So if you can keep Zimmerman for, the sort of similar money to Mayer, then I think you are really, I think it's fine to keep the two. The last thing I'll say, sorry, Steven, is that there's no reason to go to two from these three. There's absolutely, the roster should be able to handle three top quality center backs and have them in your roster for at least one more season. There's no reason for Nashville SC to trade or sell one of them. That's at least where I'm at. If you want to keep this competition going, you got to have at least three really good options for two positions.
Yep. I would absolutely agree that you can have multiple people in that position and be perfectly fine. We have some mailbag questions to go through, some reviews to go through, and again, we got another match coming up this weekend, and we're going to talk about that next right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer. And we are back right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer, again at PharmaSoccer on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Of course, make sure you do check out 615soccer.com, as I stated in the second segment. And also be sure to check out pharmasoccer.com for all the merch and all of that fun type of stuff. Would love to have you a part of that. Before we move on to a couple of the mailbag questions and just the ratings and reviews, any MLS news? I personally want to talk about Valera's favorite player and son doing absolutely fantastic work for LAFC right now. Absolutely, just what a turnaround of a season. Valera, what is it like seeing your favorite player in MLS doing this? Is it fun?
It is so annoying that we did an interview about Son and it's an Everton fan and an Arsenal fan, two fan bases that do not like the guy.
I think it's great personally. It's fun to see. I'm glad Valera is extremely happy.
I do want to say
that was a special. Valera's response was a special for our 615 Soccer subscribers. You can see that in video form at 615 Soccer.
It's only video. I do want to say in MLS, obviously the Eastern Conference is kind of all over the place, but in the West, from like the middle portion to the bottom that are still eligible to make the playoffs, it's gonna be a wild 3 weeks or so for them. So pay attention to that table in the West because I think it's gonna be a lot of changes.
Did you guys also go when you saw Austin beat Seattle over the weekend?
Yep, absolutely, I did. I absolutely did.
To be fair, I did watch a good amount of that match, and look, Seattle put in a very Nashville SC performance because they totally outplayed Austin and just couldn't finish. And it is what it is, huh?
All right, we do have one mailbag question. We did get a bunch of Open Cup related mailbag questions. We'll get to those next week. I think we'll probably do just a special kind of Open Cup preview sort of episode. We haven't fully planned that out yet, but we'll talk about the Open Cup a little bit more next week. This week, though, we did get a question from Elm. Is there something inherent in our system that is preventing a third top goal scorer from emerging? I don't know if that's true because Jacob Schaffelberg has with 3. Hello. I mean, we actually have a third one that has emerged.
Clay?
Do you guys want to?
Well, I mean, the most inherent thing is not having a consistent winger. Like, I think if you took the goals from the winger and they all came from one guy, you would say that's an okay third option. But because there's been so much inconsistency out there, we haven't really seen any of them become a consistent goal scorer. And I think that plays into perception a little bit, because if Jacob Schaffelberg is sitting here with, say, like 7 goals, you feel a whole lot differently about his season. And so I do think in some ways the inherent thing is the inconsistency on the wing, but the real problem here is that guys aren't finishing their chances. It's not like people haven't gotten high quality chances and not scored. Now, the bulk of the chances for Nashville do naturally fall to Sam Surridge and Hani Mukhtar, and goal scorers are going to be inherently a little bit greedy. That's just the way it works. That's the reason they score so many goals. But at the end of the day, you've got players not finishing off quality chances, and you've got inconsistency out there, which makes them more likely to not finish off quality chances. So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy at that point.
I would say if there's anything in the system in itself that prevents that, and I'm not sure if I agree with this statement. I'm just saying, like, if there is anything, if we're nitpicking, I would say just how much the wingers, quote unquote wingers, are asked to do defensively. Because it is more than your usual winger would do on off the ball, or even trying to get the ball back, counter pressing and all that. So if I were to pinpoint to something, I'd say they're probably tracking back a little bit more than your average winger would at, say Inter Miami, maybe. But I think that would be the only thing I can draw from the system. But look, if you look at similar teams that play similar style, like I just looked at Philadelphia Union in 2022. Now, it's not the same. They played with two forwards, so it's a little different. But even with 2022 Philadelphia Union, they had 5 players with 6 goals or more in MLS. So it's not the system. I don't think so. I think it does more have to do with the individual players. Personally, that's how I view it.
I do think there is another one part of the system as well. When it comes to our central midfield being a little bit lying back more than typical, I think we've seen that Yazbek and Eddie, they do actually have a good boot and can put on a couple decent shots. I think just the way that they're kind of set back a little bit more, kind of doesn't give them the ability to kind of free fire. That's what we talked about in the beginning of the season of Gaston Brugman being able to kind of have those opportunities and chances as well. If there were consistencies in the lineup of that would be my only thing. But I do think Clay is probably correct in his statement that if we had an accurate, inconsistent winger, it would be a completely different story.
I think this is also a watch this space sort of thing. Obviously, we just talked about using a DP slot on a center back. Well, we have essentially used the equivalent of a DP spot on a winger. And Ahmed Qasim has had very much an up and very down season at times. It's also his first season in MLS. We've seen a lot of players struggle their first season in MLS and take a giant step forward in their second season. If they believe in Ahmed Qasim, that is a DP level type financial commitment. Because of the contract, because of paying the transfer fee and all this stuff. So if he were to have the season that you would expect from that sort of level, then I think you would see an uptick in the winger spot next year. That's what they want. Now, will we see that? I don't know, because international signings are always kind of it may or may not work, and we won't know for a year.
All right, we do got to get going. We do have a preview and ratings and reviews to kind of go through. We do have one review from podcast, which you did not know specifically. If you give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, we will read it on the air out loud. So please continue to do those. We haven't had some of these in a bit. I think I missed the last ones, but yeah, I'm being made to read this one. Is there a name to this one?
NSC fan is the name, and it's fortunately written in the way that you talk sometimes.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Stephen Robinson. I am a co-host of this show, but I like never showing up. I recently missed a hosting an episode so I could watch my utmost favorite team, the Chattanooga something. You think if they would be my favorite team, I would know the name of them. Exactly. You dumb. They play top-notch association football. No, they don't. Which lazy Americans call soccer. Go Big Chat. It was the English that developed the name soccer in the first place. It's all England's fault.
Can you thank the 5-star review?
Thank you for the 5-star review. I really appreciate it. You all are fantastic, amazing people. We play Houston on Saturday.
Can I tell you guys a fact before that?
Sure, buddy. Why not?
So we do the prop bets, right? And we have one of the prop bets is first game NSC scores from a direct free kick. And everybody got it wrong except one person who hasn't gotten it right, but only one person has the ability to get it right. And that person is Stephen Robinson, who put Open Cup Final. So now, with that said,
are you kidding?
We did that. With that said, Stephen only put $1 on that, so I don't think it will make a difference. But imagine because I was just
Steven
reading
will
through.
live off that for the next 10 years of prop bets.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. I don't even care. I've already won prop bets this year pretty much, but I will absolutely. Oh my, thank you,
Yeah.
Flair. I needed that.
Yeah, that's.
I needed
We'll
that.
see if it happens. Yeah, Houston is a team, and Nashville is playing them. Is that good enough? No, I'm just kidding.
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I know that Ben Olsen is the coach. Other than and that Jack McGlynn is now there. Other than that, I got nothing.
So Houston is actually an interesting case because they are a good case for winning the Open Cup and what it does to a fan base that maybe isn't now. Theirs is a little different. They weren't sold on Ben Olsen. He started playing really nice soccer, won the Open Cup in Miami against Miami. I don't know if y'all remember that 2 years ago. It was
Yeah, that's
actually
right.
it was really, really a good performance from them, and it was a big deal. The second season for them, which was last season, is okay. They made the playoffs, but never really threatened in any way. And then this season has been way more up and down than I think they would like to be. They do have some dangerous players. Ponce is one of them who scored in the weekend. He has, he has 10 goals already this season in MLS. He's always going to be dangerous. And they're similar to Nashville in that their fullbacks are actually pretty dangerous players. Dorsey, who was an Open Cup sort of legend, legend is too strong a word, but he had really good performances in the Open Cup. He plays right back, already has 4 assists in MLS, 2 goals. And Andrade on the left also, goes forward. And then I would say that the biggest sort of player to watch and maybe the most exciting player Houston have is Jack McGlynn. They got him on a big transfer from Philadelphia Union, USMNT prospect. I guess he's not a prospect anymore. He plays for the USMNT. 21-year-old, 22-year-old, sorry. Mainly plays in the middle, but has 6 goals, 6 assists in MLS this season. Just really good player, creative player. Likes to be kind of in that 10 role and dictate games. So I would keep an eye out on him. I think he's going to give Nashville defenders a lot of trouble. But Houston is in a fight for the playoffs position. I mean, they are all and again, when I was telling you to look through the Western Conference, anywhere between 7th even, but mostly 8th to 12 can go either way for the playoffs. And Houston is smack in the middle of that with 10th with 36 points in 31 games. So yeah, I don't think they're gonna be pulling any punches here, and I think that it's kind of a free hit for them as well. I know Clay really likes that reference.
Shout out to cricket references.
Clay also really likes Houston, so we all know that.
I mean, I did enjoy my time in the stands in Houston for a couple years.
So why don't you give your plug-in prediction and just kind of reasonings for why you think that, Clay?
Well, first off, I do think like Houston is like a classic hard to figure out MLS team. They've got some terrible losses and some okay wins, like in that part of the thing. It is funny to look at the playoff standings because they're right in the mix with like 7 fewer points than the team in the same spot in the East. I honestly am very curious about the Nashville lineup because I think this is an important game for the league for Nashville. All the games are important now, especially with how close it is in the East. But you also are going to have to travel to Austin to play the biggest game since the League's Cup Final. And if Nashville wins, obviously the biggest game in club history. So I am very, very curious to see what this lineup looks like because I can understand kind of both approaches. And so I think we're going to end up seeing essentially like an A- B lineup type of thing from Nashville in this game. I do think that should still be good enough to get a result. But I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being a little bit disappointing leaving Geodis Park on Saturday. So you can follow me at Clay La Soul on Instagram and Twitter. You can check out Nashville Soccer Archive. If you have anything you'd like to donate to the archive, that'd be awesome. I found out that there is a listener who is also a professor at Vandy that is using the archive for his class this semester, which is pretty cool. So we have a physical archive at Vanderbilt University. So please let me know if you have anything that you would like to donate. And as for what you can expect this weekend, I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw with Nashville scoring late to rescue the draw.
All right. I'm going to go with Well, first follow me at Valer Shabilla and sign up for the foot golf tournament. Kicking it 615, ki615.org, at Kicking It 615 on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. Foot golf is fun. When you're doing it to help out a local cause, it's even better. So make sure you check out the foot golf fundraiser for Kicking It 615. Prediction wise, I don't know. 2-1 Nashville. Let's do it. I think it's gonna be a full squad of A stars, and I don't think BJ Callahan's going to rotate at all. Actually, I think he's just going to go for it. Nashville got the best results in their history, pretty much, when they were playing every 3 days, and I think BJ Callahan demands that from his players. Big game in MLS. You're at home. No reason to rotate a whole lot. Maybe 1 or 2 players, but that's my prediction. And I think Nashville's going to pull it through 2-1 with both goals from Sam Sturridge, who is now tied for the Golden Boot with Messi. No, Messi surpassed him by 1. So he's going to get 2 back, go up higher than Messi, but Messi does have double the opportunities to make it up. So we'll see.
I'm not gonna lie, I'd be good with rotation because the last time that did happen, it was kind of against an Orlando team, and it worked out really well for Nashville at the end with that rotation. Um, I'm gonna go a 1-0 win for Nashville with rotation, and Teal Bunbury is gonna be the one that scores the goal for Nashville SC. That's my prediction, and then we get to go in the next week with so much fun.
Can I just say, Teal deserves a goal.
He does.
He
really
does.
does.
He is not getting credit for the amount of work that he puts in at the end of games, and it would just be great to him to have a goal just to like put in his back pocket after doing so much dirty work at the end of games this year.
He's just waiting for the Open Cup Final.
It could be that too.
Bunbury hat trick, last 5 minutes of the Open Cup Final.
What if Teal was the one to score the free kick in the Open Cup Final specifically?
First of all, it would be wild to see Teal take a free kick from whoever else is on the pitch to start with. Second, imagine if you need a hat trick in the last 5 minutes of a final. You guys will be nervous. Like, how nervous will you be?
I'm not taking comments on my nervousness from the man I watched freak out during the 2021 penalty shootout.
Yeah, that was not fun. Did not enjoy that experience. 0 out of 10.
This is a different Valer now. This episode is going on for too long. Thank you guys again so much.
I don't.
Thank you guys so much for listening to the show. We truly do appreciate it. Of course, we'll be back next week to talk about this match as well as talk about the Open Cup as we're going to be getting ready to go to it. Thank you guys so much again for listening. Really appreciate it. We will talk to you next week.